Democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
Now the Ukraine, and St. Patrick's name is now Zelensky.
Imagine a future. The freight trucks that deliver bread and milk to our grocery store shelves, and the buses that take children to school and parents to work. Imagine all the heavy-duty vehicles that keep our supply lines strong and allow our economy to grow. Imagine that they produced zero emissions. Well, you all imagined it. That's why we're here today. Because we have the ability to see what can be, unburdened by what has been, and then to make the possible actually happen.
More to report. With regard to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
Refuse to go along with this, and I'd see through all of your lies, Barack Obama, you wicked, wicked devil!
Welcome back to another night of Stick with Koolfrogg. Yeah, we got quite a night to come ahead of us. It's going to be an interesting one. We'll see if we can't make it through it. I really don't know how far I'm going to make it through all this. I do have some articles that I pulled up from Salon. To give you context on Salon, when it comes down to it, they're fairly left-leaning. Let's see if we can't pull up a media bias chart for you real quick and let you see what I'm talking about when I say that they're fairly left-leaning. Where's my... Now, I downloaded one so that I had it. And of course, what? It should be in recent... Why isn't recent? What the? Of course. Anyway, they're fairly left-leaning and somewhat truthful. They kind of sat at the left-hand side of the big bunch in the top center. So I mean they kind of could be something that you could listen to if you really believed what they were spewing. All that being said, before we actually get into this, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, ring the bell, do all that fun stuff. Hit up the description down below. The description is actually going to give you quite a few links for me, as well as most anybody else that has a regular tendency to join my show. Where is everybody tonight? Can't tell you. Eventually, maybe somebody will come pop in here. Let's hope for the best. So, first things first. This one I found it very interesting, and I wanted to do the show on this no matter what. As I was digging around, I found more and more. I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. I don't think I can actually do all this, but we're gonna try doing it anyway and see if we can actually. Let's kind of see if we can't make that bigger for everybody. See if they can actually see that. So this is a new civil war. Maybe so, but it won't look anything like the first one. Scholar Barbara Walter foresees 9/11 style attacks and sustained insurgency rather than straight up warfare. Almost every day offers more evidence on how American fascism is becoming a reality. And now, we now know for certain that Donald Trump and his coup cabal attempted to overthrow American democracy on January 6, 2021. Oh, we now know? We now know this. Are we sure that we now know this? I just want to be sure. I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but at the same time, not saying it did, because I'm not quite positive on what this is actually going to get at. We'll see how in depth this actually gets. And this is the coup continues as Republicans and their agents are attacking America's multiracial democracy in dozens of states, seeking to make it impossible for Black and brown Americans and other Democratic Party constituents to have their votes counted fairly. Now, I've seen and talked to plenty of different types of Americans that are either, don't consider themselves part of this party at all, for whatever reason why they keep on thinking that if you're this color, that this party is your situation. It's not always that way. Rep. Mo Brooks of Alabama, a former Trump ally, said late last week, after the events of the January 6, 2021, Trump continued his seditious attempts to pressure members of Congress to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Trump himself, along with acolytes such as Michael Flynn and Steve Bannon, continued to threaten to incite political violence against those deemed to be the enemy. At a rally last Saturday in Georgia, for instance, Trump continued to threaten violence against members of the media, calling them animals. He wasn't actually threatening violence towards the media. He was just telling you that the media is corrupt and that they really don't know what they're talking about for the most. I mean, just because, they want to spew propaganda everywhere doesn't make it true. And it's never been that way. Anybody that has a half a brain on top of their head will actually be able to tell you that spewing propaganda comes in lots of forms. And for you to tell me that, this is what he said, that's not what he said. You need to go back and you need to listen to that again. He doesn't threaten violence against members of the media. He just says that they need to stop, think about what they're doing, and actually report on the truth. And when he calls them animals, he's like, they're animals. They're vicious. They're there to just destroy anything that, it goes against their narrative. Salons Igor Dersh reported last week, Trump's followers have allegedly been going door to door in Black and brown communities in Colorado. I hope not. I really don't hope that. I really hope that's not the truth. I hope that's something that's not going to actually happen. If that's actually happening, you need to stop, because it can be construed as violence. But I mean, obviously, you can go door to door and you can actually still, tell the truth, and just don't push the stupidity. Engaging in acts of voter intimidation and harassment that echo the Jim Crow era of white supremacist terror and violence. Stop it. It's not about race. It's never been about race. You know what it's about? Do you really want to know what it's about? It's about how poor or not somebody is. If you're well off, it doesn't bother you. But when you're poor, that's what they're aiming towards. It's always been that. It's always been about money. As shown by vile attacks of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson during the confirmation hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, the anti-Semitic QAnon conspiracy theory has made major inroads into the so-called mainstream of the Republican Party. Federal and local laws and law enforcement agencies continue to disrupt right-wing terror plots across the United States. Yeah, but they won't worry about anything that comes out of the left. They don't care about Antifa. They don't care about BLM. They don't care about anything like that. They don't care if you go and wore all black and ran down the street and burned down the bank, or the police station, or the liquor store. They don't care about any of that. What they care about is politics. Politics and pushing that the white man is bad. Excuse me? Stop it. That's ridiculous. The rise in neo-fascist tide is global. Some white supremacists and other right-wing extremists see the war in Ukraine is an opportunity to gain combat experience they can later use in the battle against multiracial democracy and pluralism, or pluralistic society in the U.S. and other Western nations. Experts in political violence, fascism, and other forms of political extremism continue to sound the alarm about the perilous moment now facing the United States, where democracy is teetering on the edge of collapse. Their warnings have been largely ignored by the country's political elites and public more generally. The warnings have been largely ignored by the country's political elites and the public more generally. Are you kidding me? The political elites are totally against. They are the fascism. This Barbara Walter, is a professor of political science in the University of California, San Diego. Does that tell you much? And one of the world's leading experts in civil wars, political violence, and terrorism. She is also a permanent member of the Council of Foreign Relations and has consulted with the State Department and the Department of Defense and the UN of the World Bank. Her essays and other commentaries have been featured in CNN, the LA Times, and Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. Walter's new book is How Civil Wars Start and How to Stop Them. Now, this book, this one right here, this book is gross and ridiculous. And let's pull up another tab here real fast. Oh, look at, for a hardcover, $24.84 on sale through salonsbookshop.org. And it's considered a New York Times bestseller. I mean, really? You know what it takes to become a New York Times bestseller? Write a leftist piece. That's all you need to do. Based on 10 reviews, reviewers say it's positive. It's not a rave. And look at that. There's 4 people that had a mixed opinion on it. But they're going to still market it as a positive because there's 2 people that are raving about it. Big deal. It's just another person trying to push their propaganda piece as being something that's going to actually, come from the right. It's not even true. You don't know what's going to come from any direction. In this conversation, Walter warns of the American people that their leaders have been blinded by the type of status quo bias that prevents them from responding properly to the democracy crisis and the danger of widespread political violence. She argues that privilege and lack of historical experience with oppression have combined to create a state of willful myopia and denial of most white Americans about the existential peril the country now faces. Walter draws upon some of the darkest moments in human history, such as the rise of one of Adolf Hitler and the Holocaust, to explain why so many white Americans are likely to remain in denial about the country's descent into civil war and other massive violence, even as the carnage of an imminent and already happened around them. She warns that many people will comply or perhaps collaborate with the right-wing extremists who are committing worsening acts of terror and political violence. It's not just the right and it's not just the left. You can't sit there and point fingers at one side and not look at the other. That's considered hypocrisy. You're not looking at the other side. The other side of it is Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton. I can go and name some of the other elites that are out there, but You probably know who they are. George Soros, Bill Gates. Walter does hold out some hope, however. That offers potential solutions to help mitigate the crisis, including new restrictions on the way social media platforms circulate and amplify politically extreme content. This conversation has been edited for clarity and length. Well, okay, so what did you take out of it for clarity and length? What did you remove? What was in this statement that was removed that you felt was okay to remove so that I couldn't read it? Removing things for quote-unquote clarity is not necessarily making it clear. It's making it harder for us to understand what we need to actually understand. Donald Trump continues to threaten political violence against his enemies. If he is punished for his crimes, Michael Flynn, Steve Bannon, and other right-wing propagandists are also threatening political violence on a near daily basis across the right-wing media echo chamber. The FBI and law enforcement continue to uncover potential right-wing terrorist plots. Why are so many people taking these dangers of right-wing violence seriously? What? I don't see the right-wing violence. All I see is violence from the left. Show me right-wing violence. Show it to me. I want proof. I'm sick of looking at this stuff and saying, oh, it's the right. Oh, it's the right. Where? If you go, oh, it's the racism. Are you freaking kidding me? You're the one that's bringing it up. Stop with the racism. It's not us. We don't give a shit. We don't give a shit. It's the left that gives a shit. I believe it's human nature of people to want to believe that they and their fellow citizens are capable of such things. Many people want to live in the world of wishful thinking, where life is going to continue to go on in the same way that it always has. If it is sunny today and you go to work and afterwards you have drinks with friends, and then there's a weekend when you get to watch football, it's like that today. Your bias is that it's always going to be that way. If you think that every day is going to be that you get off of work and afterwards you go and hang out with your friends and then you go play football is going to be your life, you're greatly mistaken. Your bias is that it's always going to be that way. Who has a bias? Who thinks that way? Nobody has that much of a bias where they're like, oh yeah, no, my life isn't going to change. My life is happy. Nothing's going to ever change for me. If you're not changing, you're not evolving. You're not making yourself a better person. You're just going to be a piece of crap for the rest of your life. People are status quo biased. They truly believe that the way things are today is the way that things are going to be forever. As a result, many people do not see the warning signs. What is amazing is that throughout history, violent extremists are often very public about their intentions, what their goals are, and what strategies they're going to pursue to achieve these goals. Hitler is perhaps the best example. He wrote and published Mein Kampf, laying out exactly what he intended to do. If you look at the neo-Nazis and their white supremacists here in the United States and elsewhere, they have a book called The Siege, which details exactly what their plans and intentions are. Do you seriously believe that? If you seriously believe that the right has... Oh my Lord. The right doesn't have any... They're not the white supremacists, I'll tell you that much. That has nothing to do with it. Neo-Nazis? You gonna seriously put neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and the right of the United States all in the same lump? They have nothing to do with each other. Why does everybody think that they have anything to do with each other at all? So the book The Siege, I mean, it might actually be kind of an interesting read, just as much as reading Mein Kampf, so that you understand your history and you don't repeat it. Repeating history is all that we ever do. I'm so sick of the ridiculousness. The Bible of the alt-right is a book called the Turner Diaries. No, the Bible of the alt-right, or of any right, is not the Turner Diaries. It has nothing to do with whatever these Turner Diaries are. You know what the Bible of... It's not. It lays out exactly how they intend to start a second civil war in the United States. No, your propaganda is what's going to start a second civil war. Not this. Not this at all. Includes the attack on the U.S. Capitol. And in the book is working gallows erected outside the Capitol, where they're going to bring traitors out on the trail and kill them. They're not hiding what they intend to do, and yet, throughout history, the people who are at risk are not taking those messages, warnings, or manifestos seriously. As a social scientist, the example I would start with would be the Jews across Europe prior to the Holocaust, because there is a very interesting variation of how Jews responded by country. There's also a noteworthy variation of terms of how Jews responded to the perceived threat and persecution of how communists and socialists responded. In terms of the Jews in Europe, it was the German Jews who had their heads in the sand, and most that refused to see the disaster that was about to hit them. They actually could read Mein Kampf. Many Polish Jews and Romanian Jews saw what was coming and tried to take action by fleeing Europe. The German Jews less so. Why was this? Why was this? Because you propagandized them just as much as this article's propagandizing us. When you throw around propaganda, people start believing it. The German Jews are highly educated. They were cosmopolitan. They were the most assimilated. They were the most vested in status quo. And they were not living in ghettos. And they had not experienced programs until more recently. Therefore, many German Jews believed that they were going to relatively untouched and that they had a vested interest in the society. The German Jews were more likely to be caught by surprise, whereas if you were a Jewish person living in Poland, you've been ghettoized your whole existence. Thanks much. Thanks for, labeling something that you have no clue what it actually is. But, let's go with your name. Ghettoized their whole existence. You've been the target of violence. You already know what the state is capable of, and you know what your fellow citizens are capable of. You've seen the evidence of that. Such violence does not take you by surprise. I think a similar dynamic is happening here in the United States. The American people as a whole have not witnessed the horrible things that human beings can do to each other because they have not been the target of such violence, except of course for African Americans and other people of color who do see the approaching violence and disaster. Many white Americans do not want to see it. They do not want to hear the metaphorical train that is coming for them because they have not been targets of such violence as a group. Excuse me? excuse me. Are you kidding me right now? You're going to go and you're going to say this right here? You're going to tell me that my life, my existence as a white man has really? This is disgusting. I'm so sick of this article already. Salon needs to take their tail out their butt, and they need to actually think about it for a few seconds before spewing their propaganda, such as for African Americans and other people of color who do see the approaching violence and disaster. Many white Americans do not want to see it. What? What do you think we're paying attention to? We're paying attention to the left, what they're actually doing with the corporate elites and trying to, spread their disgustingness, vile, jabby jabs, and sticking you with them and telling you what they want you to believe and saying, oh, you can't have a platform. You can't talk about certain things. If you talk about those, we're just going to take you off of the internet. And that way, your words can't disturb anybody else. White Americans as a group tend not to believe the warnings of black and brown people and others who see what is happening because they haven't had the direct experience, the hard evidence of such things being true. I also believe that because white Americans have a vested interest in the system, they really want to believe that the system is okay. And if they just keep their heads down and just weather this storm, everything's going to be okay. No, we don't. Some of us actually grew up poor and, still kind of are, really don't have a lot. We just kind of, scraping by with what we have, trying to make things work so that way, other things can actually happen. Like taking money that was given to us and rolling it into like a computer to make, something happen so that we can actually produce a show, because we can't actually go and do something for a few years because you're mandated and told that we can't. We create things for ourselves as we want them. If you're going to sit around and you're going to be in your own bias of, oh, well, I'm just going to walk around this neighborhood of nothingness and I'm going to go and smoke some crack. I mean, fine, go ahead. Go do what you need to do. But don't complain to me that you have it harder than I do. I have it just as hard as you do, man. I seriously ain't got nothing. But, I go and I work my butt off to make sure that I make enough money to raise my child. So, I mean, to stop with the ignorance. Trump and Flynn are preaching violence. You can quote them on it. If you read what they're saying, it is shocking, yet few people seem to know about it. If I were to show what Trump and Flynn are saying, their actual words, to the average American, they would say, "You're making that up. It can't be true." Thus, we have the situation where these things are happening, but the information is not being shared with the general public, or if they are hearing what is happening, then it is being distorted and not fully represented in the way that leaves most Americans ignorant to what is really going on. Trump and Flynn are not preaching violence. There's nothing in their words that say anything about violence whatsoever. They don't want the violence. You notice there was no new wars under the Trump administration, but we go and we recklessly pull ourselves out of a 20-year war just to go inject ourselves into what looks possibly be a world war, as opposed to worrying about some civil war that hasn't even happened, because dang well that most of us are going to be like, I'm not fighting you. I'm just here to live. Why are they making the pitchforks fight the fire throwers? What's going on? Why are they doing this? Why are they forcing us to fight each other when that's not the case? Historically, the side that wants to do these horrible things put themselves in a position of power to lead the dictatorship, to start a race war, commit acts of genocide, for example, to kill all the Jews in Europe, will spend a lot of time investing in propaganda because they understand that if they can control the narrative, they can control the average citizen. That's exactly what you're doing. You're trying to push narrative to try to control the average citizen, trying to tell them what they can believe and what they can't believe, trying to take people off of platforms for saying what they need to say and what is actually being said. Go screw yourself with your hypocrisy. This is exactly what is happening now in the United States. Experts and other people like us see the warning signs because they're paying attention and we're reading widely. Most Americans are not. Really? If most Americans are not reading, then they're going to be sucked into that propaganda. They need to actually go read a book. It doesn't matter what book it is, as long as it's not, CRT. Go read something else. Go read the Federalist Papers. Go read a history book. I mean, that's probably where you should start. If you've never read a book, or you haven't read a book in the last 20 years, go pick up a history book, start from the beginning of time, and work your way through the history book and see how you feel after reading and understanding the truth. At one of Trump's recent rallies, he told his followers to be ready to die to defeat critical race theory. Absolutely. Critical race theory is not the place to be. If you're thinking that critical race theory is, the end all be all for, existence, that's not going to ever help anyone. Michael Flynn recently told his audience he wanted them to charge machine gun nests in service to their cause. How do you fit these examples within your model of a second civil war or other massive violence in the United States? How do you fit these examples within your model of this? For other massive violence in the United States. I still don't see the violence. Show me the violence. Show me the actual words of Michael Flynn saying charge machine gun nests. I'd like to actually see that one. I'd be interested to see what he actually had to say. What the 3 or 4 words that came before it, or the 3 or 4 words that came after it that you're omitting from the quote. Because dang well that's what's happening. Why? Because I've listened to every Trump rally in recent history, going all the way back to probably about 2016, 2015. However long you want me to go back. I've watched them all. You can't lie to me when it comes to this stuff. I know what I'm looking at. I know what I've seen. One of the challenges that violent extremists have is how to expand their base of support. If they don't expand their support base, they just remain fringe movements forever. One way is to provoke a harsh government response. Let's say that there are peaceful protests, but then there are provocateurs there who try to get the police to open fire or to bash a few heads. Violence entrepreneurs will use these actions as evidence that the police and the government or the opposition are evil and intent on crushing them. Seriously? Those have you seen these quote-unquote peaceful protests that have been around since, since George Floyd? I have. I've watched plenty of footage, and I've seen what they're actually doing. And what kind of, trying to say that it's the right that's actually perpetrating violence. It's not. It's the left. We know it's the left. You can't lie to us about that. The tactic is often successful in radicalizing at least some portion of the average citizens. It pushes them towards the extremists. Donald Trump is what I would describe as an ethnic entrepreneur. Entrepreneur, sure. Ethnic, I guess. Everybody comes from some form of ethnicity, right? I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to twist your words. He and his loyalists want to regain power. He is an autocrat. Trump has no interest in ruling democratically, but Trump is not going to get that power back without the support of the average white American. This means that Donald Trump has to convince them somehow that his is a worthy cause to defend. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh yeah, Donald Trump's the best place to go. But I'm not damn well sure that Joe Biden is worse than what that was. We can go somewhere else. We can remove both of them from the equation. But you also have to remove a couple other people. Nancy Pelosi needs to retire. Term limits need to be set. And none of this needs to be, talked about ever again. You just move. Let's move past it. Let's drop it all. Drop Joe Biden. Drop Kamala Harris. Nancy Pelosi. Mr. Leahy. All the way down to, Mr. Pete Buttigieg. All of them. Just remove all of them. Everybody that's up there just needs to go. Previous administration, if you want to go do that too and say all of them are exempt, fine. Let's do it. Let's exempt them all. Start over. Because when the government stops working for you, that's where you change the government. That's not what the government's intended to do. The government's intended to be smaller than the people. It's supposed to work for us, not us work for them. How many people, in terms of whole population, does such a movement need to take over society and impose its will on the public? There is not much data in that question. Research suggests that perhaps 3% of the population is necessary to challenge whatever leader or group is in power. That is quite a small percentage. But if there's 3% of American population out on the streets in a sustained way, it is actually enormous. You do not need a lot of people to start a civil war, and that's going to be incredibly costly to the country as a whole. All you would need are a few militia groups who are effective at targeting infrastructure and shutting down the economy. I guess, shut down the economy and, things kind of have the tendency to, flatline, and all those people that were making money that were just richer than rich or whatever, they all feel it in their pocketbook, by the second. Those people those billionaires, there's millionaires and those billionaires, all of them. We can quote Bernie Sanders all we want on that one if you want, and just kind of be like, yep, those millionaires and those billionaires, all of them need to be taxed, properly. Well, if you just don't go and buy into anything, and you let the economy, fluctuate and flush itself out, the garbage will take itself out. What has the response been to your book and its warnings about the Second Civil War or the right-wing insurgency in America? To my great surprise, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. People are reading the book. I didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't think Americans would want to read about the possibility of a civil war or read a book that was terrifying. And they did. in large numbers. But the second response was really been that 90% of the emails I get are people thanking me. They're grateful. They've been worried about what they're seeing and feeling in the country. The most grateful emails I get are from people who live in rural areas who thank me for shedding light on this problem. There are people who say I am being an alarmist and that somehow I'm making a second American Civil War more likely by talking about it. The reality is that we know that violent extremists are on far right have been growing significantly, especially since 2008. Since 2008. What happened in 2008? Can anybody answer that question? What happened in 2008? Who was president in 2008? Does anyone remember who was president in 2008? Yeah, I bet if we actually go back and we look at the reason why is because of there was a whole bunch of us that went and voted for one person in particular because he was clean and particularly had a great demeanor and he knew how to actually talk to the people. We all voted for the same guy twice. And then we watched what he did to our country. And the most of us said no. We're not all. Go back, look at my December thing where I actually do a political compass test, and you'll see that not all of us are considered right-wing extremists. I did mine, and I'm like 2 notches to the left and 1 to the lower liberal, whatever, and it's, guys in my Discord call me a centrist for crying out loud. Yeah, when I say I have a Discord, yes, I do have a Discord. If you go and subscribe to this channel, you actually get a Discord link. For now. Eventually, that's going to change. I don't know when that's going to change, but it will. There are people who say I'm being an alarmist and somehow I'm making the second American Civil War more likely by talking about it. The reality is that we know that violent extremists in the far right have been growing significantly, especially since 2008. You can read what their plans are. You can see that many of them are stockpiling weapons and going through maneuvers and training for war. These right-wing groups were sending some of their members to Ukraine prior to the Russian invasion to gain combat experience. We know these right-wing extremists are actively recruiting from former members of the military because they want individuals with combat experience. This thing is so full of propaganda, it's ridiculous. What these right-wing extremists want more than anything else is for the rest of the American people to ignore them, because that way they can grow their numbers, get more training, and when they're ready to act, they'll have an element of surprise on their side. These right-wing extremists are relatively small, weak group. Any militias in the United States are going to be small relative to the U.S. military. They need the element of surprise. I wish that it were true that if we did not talk about this threat, it would go away. That is simply not the case. It's just like the left. You don't talk about Antifa, you don't talk about BLM, you don't talk about anything else like that. Listen, you can be like, oh, you can throw the KKK in there with them because, that's where they are. You can, it just doesn't work that way. It's so stupid. Element of surprise. Both sides are not very well organized. The left seems to be a little bit more organized than what the right is when it comes down to it, and the right kind of just stands there and looks at it and be like, hey, you can't do that, as they're doing it, and we're just going to stand there and look at them, and the second that we do anything, period, boom, oh, look at him, look at he just did, oh my God, it's an atrocity. I see a situation where the right wing is already engaging in acts of lethal violence and is mobilizing widespread violence. It is one-way battle at this point. Liberals, progressives, and other pro-democracy Americans are doing little, if anything, to defend their country against the threat. I fear that once they realize what the neo-fascists and right-wing extremists are preparing to do, it will be too late. Well, you know, what side of this argument are you fighting for? Oh my Lord. Once they realize what the neo-fascists and right-wing extremists are preparing to do, it will be too late. It's already too late because the left already screwed it up. It's been that way. It's been that way for quite a few years. Why anybody voted for Joe Biden's beyond me. I'm not contest against it. And saying that anybody else is supposed to be there by any means. This guy is the most legit president in the world. But why? Why would you want to legitimize that guy? This is ridiculous. In the CIA's manual for insurgencies, there are 3 stages. The United States is the second stage. The CIA calls it the inception conflict stage and is marked by discrete acts of violence. Timothy McVeigh's attack in this Oklahoma City was probably the very earliest instance. Here's what the CIA manual says, almost verbatim. The insurgents' goal is to broadcast their mission to the world, build support, and provoke a government overreaction to their violence so that more moderate citizens become radicalized and join the movement. They're not radicalizing anybody. They're just, people are looking at the left and they're walking away. That's exactly what's happening. And it's not this. You can say what you want. You can think what you want. But, these propagandist lies, tell you, man. The second stage is when the government becomes aware of the groups behind these attacks. But according to the CIA, the violence is often dismissed as the work of bandits, criminals, or terrorists. What is so dangerous about the second stage is that citizens, politicians, and law enforcement usually miss it. They don't connect the dots. They don't see that the movement is growing and that this is the precursor to open insurgency. Instead, these attacks are dismissed as idiosyncratic or the result of crazy people who have no connection to a larger movement. That's exactly where we are today. They don't connect the dots and they don't see that the movement is growing. Really? Who's not connecting the dots? Who's not paying attention to what's actually going on and actually, coming to their own conclusions about anything? If you're not, and you're not actually thinking, you're not actually using your own brain, you're just reading propaganda and believing what it's saying to you, you're not learning, you're not paying attention. You need to open up your eyes and start thinking for yourself. That's where it starts, right there. Right in your own head. Nobody else can change that. In your own head, you plant the seeds of knowledge, and you go and you actually, start thinking and using your brain for good. Not standing down on the corner smoking a crack pipe, because that's not what's going to actually make you go anywhere. That's not where it's at. You need to actually move on. You need to do something better. When you and the other experts use the term civil war, how is it defined? Well, civil war is a war between one's own civilization, so when it comes down to it, to define it any other way with your own definition doesn't make that the truth. Just like anything else, you can't just sit there and put your own definitions on things because you're like, let's make it mean this, because that's what I feel like it should mean today. Experts use it as a type of an umbrella term. Underneath that umbrella are all sorts of different forms of violence that can happen within a country. Civil wars mean violence that's fought by a domestic group within a country that targets the government for political purposes. It becomes a civil war or a major civil war if it kills 1,000 people during the course of the war. And you need to kill 1,000 people for it to be considered a major civil war. Why does it need to be 1,000? Why can't it be 2? Because killing anybody for any reason whatsoever, regardless to the reason, if it's political, personal, whatever, is not good for anybody, because it just creates anger out of other people to push forward and continue fighting each other until nobody wins. Civil war can take different forms. There are social revolutions such as the Russian Revolution or Mao's revolution in China. That's a revolution? Mao's mass slaughter in China is a revolution? Are you kidding me right now? Social revolution is the most destructive type of civil war. It's a civil war where the rebels want complete political, economic, and social change. There can also be a violent coup that kills 1,000 people and is contained to a capital city. There is everything in between. What we tend to see frequently in countries with powerful militaries are insurgencies. These tend to be more decentralized and usually fought by multiple militias and paramilitary groups. These militias have political goals, but their methods are very different. They don't want to engage in military directly, for the most part, don't want to target soldiers, because if they engage in U.S. military, for example, they're going to lose. They instead use unconventional methods like guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run attacks, domestic terrorism, where they're targeting the soft underbelly of society, such as civilian infrastructure. In the United States, we're not going to see a civil war like we saw in the 1860s. Or we're not going to see a civil war like we saw in the 1860s? Why not? Because now you're going to actually go the other way and you're going to say that's not what's going to actually happen? The groups that tend to start these civil wars and insurgencies are driven by resentment, As such, the groups who decide that violence is justifiable means to try to create political and social change are those that are losing status and have a deep sense of resentment towards other groups who are perceived as rising or doing better. These are the sons of the soil groups. Is it that resentment that motivates these leaders? Average citizens are motivated by a different emotion to follow such leaders. That emotion is fear, which is an incredible motivator for average citizens to pick up a gun and start fighting. I mean, you know, if you think that Trump is peddling fear, you're greatly mistaken. That's not the case. There's no fear. Ethnic entrepreneurs, violence entrepreneurs, those individuals who want to start a civil war to catapult themselves to power, understand the power of fear. What they do is create propaganda and circulate it among average citizens. They tell them that their lives are under threat. In a given society, certainly, here in the United States, most members of the general public, white Americans and privileged people in particular, are fence sitters. Really? Americans and privileged people in particular? If you feel that you're privileged, go yourself, because that's not what this world is intended to be. Being a fence sitter, I mean, I guess, I mean, you can call me a fencer because, yeah, I mean, I voted for Obama twice and then I went and voted for Trump twice. I mean, if that makes me a fence sitter I am. They may know that something is deeply wrong in the country, but they will do nothing about it. What does this oft-discussed silent majority actually do when a society starts to fall apart and the people are killing each other? Such people are going to hold on to hope as long as they can. They're going to plug their ears and cover their eyes and engage in wishful thinking as long as they can. And then, when something happens and they're forced to choose sides, their base instinct is to survive and do whatever they need to do to survive. Isn't that what we're all here trying to do? Is actually survive? Survive the ignorance of everybody that's in our current government? I'm not picking on anybody in particular. It's all of them. They can all go away permanently, suck a fat one, whatever, however, I don't, if there's a paramilitary group that is putting up roadblocks in the street, if there's a group of people wearing all black with no insignias controlling a roadblock in a neighborhood with machine guns, the average person is going to do whatever those people want them to do. Survival drives behavior. Those fence sitters are going to hope they're not going to become the targets of the violence. If you see a militia of, quote unquote, militia of persons, average persons, trying to control roadblocks in your neighborhood with machine guns, run. Just go away. Don't confront them. Don't go talk to them. Don't get them to actually see you. Do whatever you can to actually just leave. Just leave. There's nothing there for you. I mean, you can be like, oh, but, I missed this, or I missed this, or that item, or I want to go back to my house and I want to get my stuff. No. Not necessary. Just leave. Not all the far-right groups are white supremacists, but many of them are. What they want is for the United States to become a white ethno-state. Nope, that's not what they want. I mean, I can't talk for far-right groups, and maybe some of them do, but, you know, me being the centrist that I am, I say no, that's not what they want. Not at all. They don't care about ethnicity. They don't care about the color of your skin. The color of your skin always comes up from the left. Why? Because they have nothing else to stand on but to point fingers and call people names. Or at the very least, certain states like Michigan to become white ethno-states. Michigan's going to become a white ethno-state? You ever been to Detroit? These white supremacists understand that if they don't shoot at white people, then many white people are probably just going to keep their heads down and not do anything. It's exactly what happened in places like Germany, where if you see that the Germans are targeting Jews, you do everything possible to make sure that you aren't identified as a Jew. I believe that the average human who is trying to survive will do a whole lot of ugly things to keep themselves alive. Well, you know, I mean, I guess most people would try to keep themselves alive for whatever they need to do. But there's so many of them that are dependent on the government to give them subsidies to, you know, survive. They're gonna have a big problem when, you know, things come down the turnpike where they're like, uh-oh, now all of a sudden, you know, the worst came up. No, dude, no. How to prepare for American people for this civil war or insurgency or other such right-wing violence? Will it be a series of escalating events, isolated acts of violence, something spectacular like 9/11? Stop it. Stop trying to compare the government's use of certain motivations to create more war. Because when you think about it, you know, some of those motivations that are out there are not necessary. And kind of their ideal scenario is to coordinate so that on a given day there would be multiple attacks. As I see it, it would almost feel like 9/11, where you wake up in the morning and you're watching TV and you know that something's happened and everything seems chaotic. You're not really sure who's in charge or what type of threat this is or what you should do about it. Oh, you know, I woke up super early that day. I caught the first broadcast that came out of that. You know, that one that was, yeah, that one. That very, very first one. That young lady sitting at her desk. And I seen a bunch of other things happen shortly thereafter. And it just makes me wonder, why would they show one thing and then us and show another? I see a scenario where there are bombings of multiple state capitals or a series of assassinations, or maybe both at the same time. Suddenly, the federal government is facing a leaderless resistance. The country's leaders are trying to figure out how to respond. Well, excuse me, the leaderless resistance, the government is not the leader. They work for us. That's the thing. Is you keep on pushing that the government is meant to be the leader of the free world. Well, the government's not the leader of the free world. The people are. The people elect people to actually go into these positions to actually, do stuff for them. But it seems as though every single one of them becomes a little bit corrupt, if not very, and change that. Yeah. The country's leaders are trying to figure out how to respond. In the meantime, the American people are watching this all happen and wondering, what the hell's going on? Who's in charge? What should we do? No, that's not really what's going on, because most of us that have anything to do with anything are actually doing our own thing, as well as learning things that are going to actually help us exist outside of the government, such as planting food, gathering nature's plants that are still edible, that nobody ever thinks are edible. It's this sputum that's on the screen here is not what we're actually looking at. Oh, where was I? The country's leaders are trying to figure out how to respond. In the meantime, the American people are watching this all happen and wondering, what the hell's going on? Who's in charge? What should we do? Some of these right-wing militias are going to want to capture territory in certain parts of the country and hold it. Some of them are going to pursue their own agendas. For example, I could imagine militias of Michigan saying, we're never going to gain control of the federal government, but Michigan could be a white state. We just have to convince all the non-whites to leave. We do that by bombing their churches and targeting their stores with attacks. Eventually, the non-whites will be forced to move south, and we'll ultimately get what we want. And this isn't even a true quote. This is what this person is imagining and a militia would say. This is their imagination of what they're actually thinking would happen. It's not even what Michigan, screw itself. Who wants two separate freaking sections of a state separated by a massive lake? Nobody wants that. God, you're so stupid. Salon needs to take their heads out their butts, and they need to actually get a real writer. If the right-wing extremists are not able to coordinate their attacks, then we're just going to see a series of consistent attacks every week. There will be feeling that the countries are under siege. Northern Ireland is a great example of this. The British military, as strong as it was, could not get rid of the IRA. The IRA continued to operate until the British government eventually negotiated with them. If you had 15 minutes to brief President Biden or Attorney General Garland, what would you highlight as the first steps they should take to contain this threat? Well, it's not a threat. And if you think Joe Biden or Merrick Garland are going to do anything about what you consider right-wing extremism, I really think that you need to think again. And you need to actually go and maybe find a real job. Chauncey DeVega. This is a horrible piece written by a propagandist that works for a senior political writer for Salon. Come on, Chauncey. So his answer to the question, regulate social media. Really? That's what I've been complaining about the whole freaking article. Is you thinking that you can regulate our social media existence and tell us that we can't think about or talk about or however what do anything about, you're going to sit there and you're going to push this bull crap. I'm sick of it. This is bullshit. This article, anything that has anything to do with this article, I'm already not liking this stream because of it. Just kidding. I think it's actually going pretty good. It's the easiest thing that the U.S. government can do. The 5 biggest tech companies are all American companies. Don't engage in censorship. Let people put whatever they want in social media. Don't regulate what tech companies are allowed to do in terms of their recommendation engines. Don't allow them to take the most incendiary material and push it out to the widest possible audience, because that is causing a range of really negative societal effects. This includes helping to accelerate the decline of democracy, helping to grow the rise of ethnic nationalism and hate crimes, and helping to make it easier to organize militias. Regulating social media would be the quickest and easiest way to reverse these negative effects. Actually, that would be fine with me if you wanted to eliminate social media, because that would actually eliminate some of the stuff that comes out of the left as well, like this article. Saying that you need to create saying that you need to regulate social media at any point in time for any reason whatsoever is disgusting. Stop it. You don't need to do it. It's nothing that you need to do. Because the second you do that, you take away everybody's words. You don't just take away one side's words. You take away everybody's. You take away your own. You take away anything that anybody has to say, and they can no longer have the right to actually go look at it, see it, and do whatever they feel is necessary to make it worse. Excuse me, I thought I heard somebody. I think we're okay. Either way, Chauncey DeVega, this article is your imagination of what the right is. This isn't what the right is. It's nothing near that. We just want to know the truth. Not everybody's, an extremist. Not everybody thinking, oh my God, we need to form a large group and we need to use social media to contact each other. No, most of us are smart enough to actually go outside, talk to each other, other ways, in our pickup trucks. Flying our flags off the back end of it, there's plenty of ways of actually, conversating with like-minded individuals. You taking and trying to, do this regulation of social media is not going to help. It never will. Let's see here. So I really wanted to do a lot more. It's going on 10 minutes to 2 in the morning for me. The other article that I had pulled up was also from Salon, but it leads into other documents, and there's a lot to go through. I think we're gonna try making that another show, and we're just gonna call this a wrap for the night. It's a decent show, and I did it by myself. I'm proud of myself. Being that I'm proud of myself, I'm hoping that you're proud of me as well. If you're proud of me and you'd like to support me, the easiest way to do so immediately would be go to buymeacoffee.com/Koolfrogg. That's KOOLFROGG, and throw something in there, throw anything in there. I'll get it immediately. Anything that you say will be read on this channel somehow, some way, and I'll get you a response to any questions that you have. Again, there's links down below for a lot of other people as well. Make sure that you check those links, follow them, subscribe to them as well. Give them likes, share out their stuff. Like, you should look at everybody. Anything that you actually enjoy, you should always subscribe to. You should always share it with your friends. Like it. Like it as much as you can. I know you only get one, but go ahead and click that button. Ring that bell. Hold it for a second and click the all button in there. When you click the all button, then you get notified at any time that we go live. I try going live midnight Central Standard Time every night. If there's any other way that you would like to follow me, you can follow the link tree down below. Linktree/Koolfrogg will actually get you to several locations. I'm going to update it again because I do have a couple other new social media platforms that I have actually joined recently that I plan on actually adding to the link tree, so that way I don't lose. I mean, it works. Linktree was work great for not only your followers, but also for your own content, so that you can actually go and click on them if you're actually on a different computer. Just go pull up your Linktree, you can go to one of your sites, log into it, you do what you need to do. It works great. All that being said, thank you very much. Everybody have a wonderful night and day, whatever, however. Be friendly to each other, if anything. I'm sick of this finger pointing, trying to tell you what the other side's trying to say and what they're not trying to say. It just... I'm done. Later.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.